This episode of the Cloud Accounting Podcast is sponsored by Elephant. As a listener of this show, I'm pretty sure you've already embraced technology and practice efficiencies, but sometimes it's hard to find training in those areas. Some of you look to your state societies to get CPE credit, but those tend to be tax or audit focused and, quite frankly, from what I've heard, pretty boring. Thankfully, our friends at Elephant have created education for tech-savvy accountants and bookkeepers like yourself. They offer training on platforms like Xero, QuickBooks, and Zapier, webinars on topics like cryptocurrency and firm marketing, have all-star instructors who not only understand technology, but are using it to run their own practices. And just for you, Elephant has a special offer for Cloud Accounting Podcast listeners. Visit elephanttraining.com/CAP. That's ELEFANT training.com/CAP to receive 50% off your first webinar. Again, that's elephanttraining.com/CAP for 50% off your first webinar. Elephant, building better practices one bite at a time.
Welcome to the Cloud Accounting Podcast. I'm Blake Oliver.
And I'm David Leary.
And we are live at QuickBooks Connect in San Jose.
Super live. It's like the first time Blake and I are sitting. We can touch. Watch. You can't see in the podcast. We're touching each other as we do this podcast.
We are. And we are on the, what do you call this area?
I think they used to call this Main Street at one time at QuickBooks Connect. It's the main drag.
Well, yeah, we are between the main stage and Discovery Hall with all the exhibits, and it's Accountant Day at QuickBooks Connect. Day one, and there were some really great feature announcements this morning at the keynote.
I think like the first thing to be noted is Arij, and I'm never going to say her name last name, but it's Arij. And Arij is really encouraging because it's a female leader at Intuit. She came up through the ranks. So she was a product manager. She's talked to a lot of accountants. She's always been in the accountants group. And so she really understands the accountants world. And this is her first keynote ever. And she opened QuickBooks.
Yes.
Like with her first keynote ever. It was really awesome. Really proud of Arij for doing that.
Nailed it. And they had tons of stuff to talk about. So shall we dig into the new features?
Yeah, I think you have a list, right, of all in order?
I do. There are quite a few. The first one here is really a game changer. Project profitability. Intuit has now integrated T-sheets with project profitability tracking. So you have all your employees enter in their time and assign it to a project, and users, business owners, accountants will be able to see the profitability of all of their projects on a single page.
Yeah, and I think the interesting thing with that, I think that's one of those features that really fills that gap of people that, QuickBooks Desktop does A, B, C, D. QuickBooks Online doesn't do this. And this really is like, well, here's one more thing QuickBooks Desktop doesn't do that QuickBooks Online does do, or vice versa.
Yep. Yeah, and it's going to be, I think, really just throws the gauntlet down at zero now to build out that type of functionality, because that to me is the number one thing that business owners are looking for. Is they want to see projects, and they want to see how much they're making on each project. Like, is it worth it?
Because they kind of think in that mindset.
Yes.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, I mean, you can have all the fancy reports you need, all the cost of goods sold, all the good stuff and everything, but in the end it comes down to these individual projects, especially for service businesses, which is what the majority of businesses that are on cloud accounting software. So what's next?
Before we jump into that, please stop making eye contact with me. It's freaking me out. I'm used to talking to you in the closet.
It is a little
weird.
odd. Yeah.
It's strange. All right. Next up, I think they talked about practice management stuff, correct?
Yes, practice management.
It's the continued evolution in the QuickBooks Online Accountants Edition.
Yes.
Where more and more tasks for your team. So if you have a small team, 2 or 3 bookkeepers, they keep adding more and more functionality. I think one of the things that was interesting in there was like task, right?
Yes.
It was like a task list.
Yeah, you can create a task list in QuickBooks Practice Management and assign those tasks out to different staff. The idea is they come in to QBOA and they see at a glance everything they need to do all in one place. They don't have to go look through their emails or anything like that.
And I think there was templates, right? So you could create a task template. If you have to run payroll for client A, you could have a template of steps to do.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, and actually it rolls right into our next feature, which is this amazing email to work feature that Intuit has now built. So I think I kind of missed this because I was sitting in the back, but the idea is you can forward an email and it'll create tasks automatically using AI.
Yeah, I wasn't too, obviously they covered a lot, and the demos are very, very fast that they're covering, but that was the gist of it. You could get any of your emails, it doesn't matter where your emails are at. If you have client-related emails, you just forward them to QuickBooks, and then a task is created. Now, I don't know if it's creating a task based on the context of the email, or if it's just taking a task like, hey, read this email. But it gets you, so if you set up a rule, you don't have to leave QuickBooks Online now to run your firm, because all those emails from your clients will be showing up in QuickBooks Online, if you think about it that way.
Really interesting. Some more automation is statement auto import.
That was a big one. That might have had almost a standing ovation. Like, people really want to see their bank statements come in. And it really makes sense. We talked about this before. Bank feeds, everybody wants bank feeds. It makes sense. It makes sense when you're getting the feed of the transactions to just get the bank statements as well. And so apparently Intuit is now, with QuickBooks, going to bring those bank statements straight into QuickBooks Online. Now, I don't think they're doing any OCR of the bank statement. They're just there. So you can reference them and look at them if you need to.
Yeah, and I mean, it's something that people are used to logging into online banking to get those statements, but I mean, when you have to do that across dozens of clients or hundreds of clients every month, that can be really tedious. So it should be a nice feature.
I mean, literally, I thought people were going to stand and applaud. We've got the loudest applause of all the features today, and it seems so obvious. Like, it's something it should have been doing decades ago.
Yeah,
it's exciting.
Well, I'm interested to see how many banks this actually rolls out with to start, because every bank is different. And so, like, creating that feed to pull in those PDF bank statements, it's going to be a challenge. So I can't imagine it'll be everyone all at once.
And the bad news is they put a URL out, which I don't know, but they were only going to let 250 people into this early beta test.
Yeah.
And I'm sure it's filled by now. So
yeah, probably.
So if you're listening to this way after the fact, you've missed your chance.
Another feature that was announced is the client overview page. I'm not sure if that is live yet or if that is coming, but the idea with this is that when you get a new client, you as the accountant are going to be able to go to this client overview page and see in one place a lot of the information that you might gather on your own in digging through a QuickBooks file to see, is it reconciled? Are there issues that you need to fix? And the idea is to help you be able to create that quote, say, for the cleanup work that you're going to have to do.
It lets you start doing advisory work at the very first level of, like, oh, I see you're using payroll. You're not using payroll. You're using apps A, B, and C. You've never reconciled ever. And to give you some basic reports so you can start having that very first day one conversation, you're not coming in blind.
Yep.
Right, which is really interesting. So once they add you to their QBO as the accountant, you instantly will have this dashboard that tells you all about that client.
Yeah, so you're going to see the setup status. You're going to see what features are turned on, if it's payroll, sales tax, if they're using that. You'll see what apps are connected. That's a cool one. So you'll see if they've got Fathom connected to QuickBooks, or they've got Gusto set up or whatnot. And then there's going to be a page of common issues showing not unreconciled transactions. Number of transactions in undeposited funds. That's a big one, right? Business owners are always messing that up. And you'll be able to click into those numbers to drill down into the transactions, which is pretty cool. So, like, from my perspective, this is going to automate several hours of work that we used to do manually when we were onboarding new clients, or not onboarding, but doing the dive into their QuickBooks file to determine what what fees we would charge them. Basically, we'd have a list of things to go look for, like undeposited funds or unreconciled transactions or all that. And now it's all going to be in one place automatically. Yeah. That's pretty cool.
And what's interesting about this, because it's using machine logic and
Machine learning and AI to do this, and it used to take you a lot of time, so you'd have to bill your client for that. Yeah. Hey, I'm going to do this first assessment of your file, and I'm going to charge you $600. Yeah, we would charge people $500 for their assessment minimum.
Now you might be able to not have to charge them at all.
Yeah,
because this is just good enough.
Yep.
Right. The only thing I noticed they didn't have in that is it should probably show any other accountants or bookkeepers you've invited to your QuickBooks Online file, because you can invite more than one. It'd be nice to know who else has been invited.
That's a good one. What else on the roadmap? So they announced that benchmarking is on the roadmap for QuickBooks, which it's going to be interesting. I'm curious to see how that actually works. The idea of being like, oh, I have a client that is a retail shop. I can benchmark them against other retail shops or something like that.
And hopefully they used QuickBooks data. Because I think you can get benchmarking stuff in some other tools out there, and they just use those, or the NICS codes or something, right? And then there's some standard industry numbers, and there's a lot of products that do that. But I think it's really interesting if they can benchmark this against truly, like, okay, what does a flower shop that does this kind of volume do? And in this zip code. Like, that's really, really interesting. I think there was one more thing before we talk about the keynote, because I know you love the keynote.
Yeah.
Something about, for practice management, it was similar to practice ignitions type thing, some sort of engagement letters or some level of that.
Oh, I missed that.
Okay, so I think, and this is like, you go to after an hour and a half of announcements, you start to lose track of what's there, but I think they're starting to introduce some low level of engagement letters. So the engagement contract, so where you can send that out if you be a QuickBooks Online account edition, you can engage your client, maybe get them to agree on the scope of the work, and then that comes back somehow. But I think talking to the practice ignition guys, it's really just enough for somebody who's never done it before, and then but something like practice ignition or a tool is going to be way deeper to have changes in the contract, etc. But I think they're tiptoeing in those waters.
Well, finally, we got to talk about the keynote, because I thought the keynote was great.
It was great. And I don't think I've seen a keynote like that at Accountants Day before.
So this was, Vin Giang. So he's a magician who came to speak about showmanship and communication to accountants, which I thought was great. Being a musician myself, I've taken a lot of what I learned as a musician and applied it to sales or applied it to running a practice. And I think that any job where you have to be on stage in front of people is going to teach you a lot. Especially, and Vin said this, accountants are becoming advisors, right? This is a cliche at this point. But showmanship is really important when you become an advisor, because if you can't communicate effectively, if you can't persuade people, if you can't make them listen to you, then it doesn't matter what you're saying.
Yep.
So I thought that it was really cool that Intuit brought him in. He had some great lessons for us as well.
Well, I mean, before we kind of talk about those lessons, he was really relating this back to a magician. So you can have all the technical magician skills in the world, but if you can't do that psychological kind of part and communicate properly, it doesn't matter.
Yeah.
And it's kind of the same thing. You can have tons of information about numbers. You can know all the numbers, but if you can't communicate them properly to your client, it's just not going to matter. You're not going to be able to look magical to your client.
So the 5 takeaways he gave us, in terms of just basic communication, rate, right? So this is the speed at which you speak. So if you're speaking slowly or quickly, volume, varying your volume is really important, right? So sometimes you got to be quiet. Sometimes you have to be loud and get excited, right? Hopefully we're doing that on the podcast to keep you engaged and interested.
That was my take on this. I'm like, I should pay attention to some of these.
What are the rest?
We had pitch, and pitch is an interesting one because he kind of related to melody. Like, you cannot remember all the words in your favorite book on one page, but you can remember the same number of words if they're in a song.
Yep.
And it's because of that pitch and the melody.
Maybe we should sing the podcast, David.
You have the musical background, not me.
Tonality, that means feeling your words, right? So stretching them out, elongating those vowels, really showing that you love accounting. Did I do that right? I think
so.
I dug into that.
And that's one I feel like I've always done okay with, but the next one is the one I'm horrible at, which is the pause. Because you say, so, I'll say lots of things like that to fill that space.
Yeah.
And just, he really said just practice pausing, because it'll make you naturally stop saying, so, what's the other things people say? What do you say, Blake, when you pause?
Right.
Right, yeah. All those words that you don't want to say,
and it gives your customer or client the opportunity to speak, which is important because we don't always do the best job of listening.
The other big takeaway, I think you didn't really know it, was the kind of the lesson of sometimes there's something that seems impossible and you can't just attack it. You just have to take one little step because you don't know what step 2 is going to be until you take step 1. And I think that was a huge takeaway that was more mental, right? And if you could take that first step, you know what to do next. But don't try to figure out step 2 and step 3 because it's almost impossible. Just take step 1, and that's probably like the journey of the cloud. Just take that first step, automate something, try some app, and go from there. I think that's it. That's day 1, which is very exhausting. We should do this again tomorrow.
We'll be back tomorrow with takeaways from the main day of QuickBooks Connect. Until then, this is Blake Oliver and
David Leary
signing off.
Bye, guys.